Hello, everyone. How are you today? Nice to meet you again. And today, let's go back to continue our discussion on the billing topic. Okay, so last time, what we have discussed was financial transaction, which is the fundamental element in any financial impact to the customer. For example, billing, payment, adjustments, they all generate financial transactions. Now, today I would like to continue to talk about what is billing and when and how billing is happening and impacting the customer. First chapter, I will talk about billing overview. I will talk in general what is billing and what does billing do. Okay, so very basic facts check. Okay, so regarding billing, first of all, we know from the V model we have accounts, we have service agreement, and any service agreement which requires consumption, they are normally linked to the service point, where the meter reads is recorded on the service point. The financial transaction generated from billing will cause the service agreement or account balance to change. Bill contains charges for service in many different ways. So it could be a metered service, consumption based, or ad hoc charge. For example, one-off charge, say, install EV service points, or insurance premium, which could be reoccurrence charge, but not based on consumption, but based on a kind of payment plan. And then we talk about the account must have a SA for every service that is built, which means if you have a service to be built, regardless whether it's consumption based or it is one-off charge or it's a recurrence charge, but not consumption based, they all need to have their own SA. So an account could have multiple live SA at one point, and when a bill is generated, one bill is generated for one account, but there are multiple bill segments generated for different service agreement based on the service agreement type. Okay, so this is quite important because we will need to explain how the bill is constituted and how the bill segment actually is generated. Now the next one is each service agreement contains information that controls how much the customer pay for the service and when they are billed for the service. So service agreement controlled by service agreement type actually defines a lot of behavior of the bills billing scenarios, and they actually control pretty much not only the billing but also payment, financial related service, because remember, service agreement represents a service. So the metadata of service agreement, which is service agreement type, defines the behavior of a service agreement. So we will talk more on service agreement type to help you to understand what kind of property it defines. Okay, so here we have just the one simple example. Okay, so what I'm trying to illustrate is this is the how many functions related to billing a service agreement type will control. And I'm taking one example, which is a very simple one: electricity residential service agreement type. Okay, so this is a single view and residential for the customer segments, and how that looks like, which attributes actually impact the bill. First of all, service type. So service type could be electricity, gas, and water. In this case, will be electricity. Distribution could be account receivable, utility, because distribution actually defines when the financial transaction is generated, how it is distributed to a GL. Okay, and value rates, which means which rates can be assigned to this service agreement. So for electricity residential, what is the possible rate, and what is the default rate? And then going on for the payment information, so payment information, we can define priority, overpayment information, financial algorithm, late payment. So through the algorithms on the service agreement type, we can define what they are, and we can have algorithm to dynamically calculate different aspects of this information. The next one is billable. So bill segment type, how to charge, financial algorithm, calendar billing. Now, billable, obviously for electricity, it is billable. And so how do we actually calculate the bill segment? It's service points rated. And how to charge, it's based on consumption based rate. And financial algorithm, like the payment is credit and for financial algorithm, it's all payment. For the financial algorithm for the billable, the charge is bill and the payment is pay. Okay, and also you can define what is the valid service point type, which means for this type of service, what type of service point we can assign the consumption from. So in this case, it's electricity residential. You can, in an implementation, if you have say dual fuel, gas and electric, you can have different service point type with different service agreement type, and you can easily configure it and make sure you're using the right service point. And then debt class, which means if the bills is not paid and debt is generated. Remember, we talk about the debt and debt age in financial transactions. So debt is generated as long as the bill is generated. And debt can have different classes. In this case, it will be residential. And also you can define severance criteria when we start the collection process, and also reoccurrence charge. And all these information could be allocated and configured on the service agreement type for different purposes, but all related to billing. Okay, so next we have a look at bill. I think this is probably the first time I've shown a bill on this slide, but I'm not quite sure if you have seen a bill before in your implementation. It might look very different from this one because different projects would have different logics for the bill calculation and bill presentation. You might see the PDF version when it's get printed, which might look completely different from the one in this example. But what I'm trying to explain in this slide is what is the key components of the bill and how they are, what is the property of these components, and we will discuss in details on each of that in the future videos. So first of all, if we look at this simple bill, okay, so the first one is the if we look at the bill routing, means who actually gets the bill, and bill message. We can add a message on the bill, and it can be assigned dynamically when the bill is generated based on the algorithms. And next, we can have different bill segments. So in this bill, we have two bill segments, one for electricity and one for gas. Now remember, bill segment is normally based on the service agreement. So in this case, we actually generate one bill for accounts which have two service agreements. One is electricity and one is for gas. Okay, and then at the back of this bill, we have bill. We have financial transaction on the bill, which is in blue, and the financial transaction, as we mentioned last time, it is based on the bill segment, okay, and adjustment and the payment segment. So what happens is if you have two bill segments, then that means two financial transactions is generated. If a payment is made, payment will be split into two bill segments and match with the bill segment based financial transaction to do a match event, probably just to match them up, and then potentially we have adjustments. So that could be one-off charge, etc. But that will be balanced by the payment event as well. So match event as well. So for this session, I think a few basic knowledge, we just go through that. So first, a bill is generated for account. A bill is sent to one or more person. So okay, so it doesn't have to be just one person. Normally you will have, so on the account, normally you would have a main customer. Generally, they are the one who pays for a bill. So we will send to them when the bill is generated. But that's not always the case. You can configure them. But in addition of the main customer, you could also have, let's say, TPI. If customer is represented by TPI, TPI could actually pay for the bill on behalf of the customer. Now, one thing I have come across recently, so a lot of people asking, what is TPI? TPI actually stands for Third Party Intermediate, and TPI could be many different entity. Okay, so a very general, a very common one is broker. So a broker could stand for their customers. But also when you look at the when you look at the customer relationship or customer hierarchy, you realize in many cases, for example, in UK, if you live in a village and then you have say a corner shop in the village, you don't necessarily present. I mean, being a direct customer with the energy company, your service might come through the console. So you see a lot of console which have been the TPI for example, for the local service. So it could be the console for the fire station, and could be console representing a local school or local church. So they would actually not only behaving like a broker, but also they would represent the underlying entity, business entity in this case. So TPI actually covers a lot of different entities. We will expand on that in the future as well. Okay, so next, a bill can have messages, which, as I said, it can be a dynamic message, and that can be generated when the bill is created and completed. So bill have a due date and a amount due. Okay, yeah. Bill when bill is generated and completed, amount is the aggregate amounts from the bill segment, and also the due date is also because normally the bill segments, they are all effective on the same time when the bill is completed. So the due date will be a calculation from that date plus whatever date has been configured. A bill contains a summary of how the customer balance changes since the last bill. Yes, because the as we have this amount due, normally what you can do is you can add that to the current balance to reflect, well, the previous balance to reflect the current balance, and then see what is the new amount after bills generated. SA contributes bill segments, as we just mentioned. A bill segment has a bill period that defines the start and end dates of the charges. So bill segment normally, let's say if it's a monthly bill, normally if you say the start date is beginning of the month, end date is end of the month, then all this period for the billing is actually reflected on the bill segment, not on the bill. So in the bill actually doesn't have a start and end date, but the bill segment, the collection of the bill segment actually defines what's the start date and end date. After that is a bill segment can have messages. Yeah, bill segment level can also have messages. A bill segment contains the details of how it was calculated. So as we mentioned, it could be consumption based, or it could be one-off charge, it could be reoccurrence charge, which is not consumption based. So this will be defined on SA type, and because service agreement is generated from bill segment is generated from service agreement, then we will have all these details reflected on bill segment. So bill segment of consumption-oriented SA have a snapshot of meter reads used to compute the consumption. When we talk about bill segments, we will see in the case where, for example, C2M, the consumption is normally generated from MDM side, and that is through an object called usage, and the usage actually calculates all the consumptions based on the meter reads, but all these information are reflected in the usage object related to a bill segment. Okay, so part 3, we will look at the bill cycle. So first of all, let's be honest. I mean, if you have projects with utility, the utility could have hundreds, thousands, millions of customers in some cases, and every month you are generating potentially millions of bills, if they are monthly bills. So there is no way uh, we can manually generate the bill for them, and actually 99% of the bill they are generated automatically, and this is done through a batch called billing, when that which generates the bill and complete the bill as well. And 99% of the bill, if the meter read is found or can be estimated, there is no human intervention required. Everything just go automatically. Okay, so only 1% of the bill, potentially, if there is some issues, maybe there's a warning on there's a bill stop on the account being set. These ones requires manual intervention, but in general, majority of that is done by the batch. So you actually find probably in your project, billing is the most important batch in the schedule. Billing, the time where we schedule billing batch actually cascade down to all the other batches when they should be running. Because if you say, I have to get all my bills by 8 o'clock in the evening every day, then you have to schedule all the other batches according to billing. Okay, so this is the main batch in CCMB for bills, and probably the main batch for every day's bill cycle. I mean the batch cycle, batch schedule. Okay, second one, cycles and schedule. So every account refers the bill cycle, and the bill cycle has a bill cycle schedule defined when the billing batch process should attempt to create a bill of account. So if you look at your bill cycle schedule, it actually defines a few of the attributes which being used during the billing batch. Okay, so I mean, this is something in the next bullet points I talk about the bill window. So what are these attributes? So first of all is the window start date and then window end date. Now these two are actually saying from a certain date I will start to generate the bill if the read is available. Okay, so on the first day, let's say the start date, if read is available, a bill will be generated. If everything goes fine, it will be completed. And however, if you don't have a read at that time, what would happen is it will wait until the estimate date, which is another attribute for the bill cycle schedule. It will basically estimate on that date. Normally, the estimate date is same as the window end date. Okay, so that's just normally. And then we also have a accounting date, which means when the bill is completed, what is the accounting date we should set on the financial transaction. We need to stamp a date for that. And then last one is the freeze and complete, which means if it's ticked, if the bill is generated, the system will try to freeze it and complete it. Normally that's ticked. I haven't seen in many projects not being ticked. Because again, I mean, if you want the bill to be automated, then you have to ask the system to not just generate it, but also complete it. Okay, so next one is the bill cycle allocation. If we think about an end-to-end process, okay, so the V model, when the customer comes to us, we will understand what the customer is, who the customer is. Now, at that point, the person is actually created. And then we ask the customer, what is the service we can provide for you? And they could be a service point, let's say a single service point. At that point, we have premise, location, which means location, and also service point generated. Okay, so on the V model, we have two ends. They are actually provided by the customer. Now we start to create account. Okay, we create account, or normally that's a billing account for the customer, and we link the account with the customer. The customer might be the main customer on the account. When the account is there, we will start registration for the customer. When the registration, during the registration, normally what happens is we understand the registration is complete. We create the service agreement to link the account and also the service point, because very often it's a service point consumption based. But also the service agreement, if there's, say, one-off charge or, for example, excessive credit, SA need to be created, that is also created. So this is the order of things happening, okay? When the account is created, we don't necessarily have a bill cycle, because when do we actually bill this customer? If it's consumption based, it is very much dependent on when it's the meter actually read. And that is something called the meter read cycle in MDM. So what happens normally is we will ask the market, or we ask the service provider for data collector. So what is your schedule? What schedule can you be assigned to read the meter? In the old days, we have manual meters, so they have to go to a field and read meter. It could be quarterly, it could be monthly, but it has to be scheduled periodically, and then comes back to us. For example, if the meter is read every month at the end of the month, then you need to align your bill cycle maybe a few days after the read cycle, because you have to give some leeway to allow the reads to be loaded. And then by that time you are saying, okay, I should have this read on the window start date, and then I start to bill. But if by the end of window end date I still don't have it, then I'll try to estimate, because by that time I should have, unless the meter read, the actual meter read is missing. Okay, so bill cycle allocation is based on meter cycle information in most cases. Okay, last one, entity relationship. So here I try to look at three entities: bill cycle, account, bill. So every account will be assigned to a bill cycle when, as we just talked about, when the registration process decides when the data collector will actually read the meter, and the bill cycle will be assigned accordingly. Each bill generated is based on the account, and as we said, the bill segment is actually generated based on the service agreement. Okay, so that's the end of this session, and I think next one I would continue, and I think we will talk about the bill segment, which is the more important, and it is actually the more complex process for the bill, because if you look at the bill we talked today, it is a high level structure. It's actually like a collection of bill segments where the bill segments actually generates financial transactions. So bill becomes a container rather than the actual financial impacts for the customer. So great to have you today, and see you next time.